Hello everyone and welcome to the LinkedIn Collective Studio at Cannes. I'm Penry Price, Vice President of Marketing Solutions at LinkedIn. And I'm here today joined by Stefan Pretorius, the Chief Technology Officer at WPP, and Jonathan Adishak, who's our Chief Marketing Officer and Communication Officer at IBM. So welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. We're here to discuss the most impactful innovations in B2B marketing right now. So let's just dive into the questions. We don't have a lot of time. So first off, I want to start, Jonathan, with you, which is we are talking about this transformative time, and at some point, every conversation these days has to get into AI. So right away, I'm going to get into it. So maybe from two aspects, one from just IBM as a company and your sort of position about AI, and then secondly from marketing communication as a function, how is it sort of impacting and sort of looking at your future?
Yeah, for us, we're really looking at AI as an opportunity for companies to take advantage of the biggest challenges that they've got and the biggest opportunities. And it's about using trusted AI. That's the essential piece here. You've got to be able to trust where the data is coming from. You've got to make sure that the AI is created to work for your organization and your organization alone, to really give the answer that you need to move the needle for your business. And it's also about governing that and making sure that you don't have the bias and the drift that can come along with time. So it's about the data, it's about the AI, and it's about the governance. And it's really underpinned by an open source approach, because we really believe that's going to drive the best innovation. As I look at the organization inside of IBM from a marketing perspective, we're really starting to use it more and more. We use it for creative, we're looking at it for events, we're looking at it for budgeting. We're seeing some great results for it as well. As I look at our events, we do half the events today that we did 2 years ago. We're seeing 5% increase in the CIs because we can be so much more targeted. We're seeing a 30 to 40% reduction in the cost of those CIs. When you look at that through the whole landscape, that's almost like putting an extra $100 million into the system in the organization. That's just one of the places that we're doing it. We're doing it on content creation, but it is pervasive in the organization, and it's only going to get better.
Maybe the events one, was that a surprise? I mean, it's a surprise to me, the impact of that, but is that so far in your learnings, is that sort of, has there been a real like aha moment, like this is really as transformative as people have talked about?
That has definitely been a place that we've really been pleased with what we've seen. I think one of the biggest surprises for us was we worked closely with WPP to use Firefly a year ago when it came out. When it was still in beta, we were one of the first people to use it, first companies to use it commercially. We created an ad for the masters. Not only did we have hundreds of selects in minutes versus weeks, the ad that got created had 26 times the regular engagement. That was a big surprise. It was our best performing digital ad we had all year last year.
So, and as you say, it's just getting started. Things are just going to get that much better over time.
Oh yeah.
So Steph, as a sort of looking across WPP and the technology stack, similarly, how are you sort of preparing, maybe two ways on this one, from a capability standpoint, sort of what do you need to sort of own and operate and run? And then secondly, how are you playing in sort of an advisory role of the use of AI, the embracing, as Jonathan's talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a massive topic, and AI is a transformational technology for all knowledge work, and so we've taken it very seriously, like IBM has. We've invested very heavily in technology partnerships, in product development, and as you say, in skills. You've got to focus the sort of people transformation part of it across the entire organization. You can't have an AI department. You don't become an AI company by having an AI department. So you have to focus on the C-level education, sort of AI in business, postgraduate education. You've got to do broad-based education across the organization to enable people and understand how they can change their daily work with AI tools. And then you do have to have core foundational research capabilities. If you want to be a leader in this space, and IBM obviously has many decades in doing this, you do need to have a core research capability that applies AI to your business domain. We bought a business, Italia, about 3 years ago. It's our DeepMind. There are only 200 people, so 200 people out of 110,000 in WPP. But the impact they're making in terms of moving our capability forward is completely disproportionate. So I think that's going to become pretty much a model for enterprise companies in terms of building AI capability. What I would say on the advisory side is we're working very, very closely in partnership with companies like IBM and like yourselves to build new solutions for the industry. And I think this is there's a new mode of solution development, which is a lot more collaborative, very agile, and very fast that I'm seeing now, which is very different from years before, right? The solution that we developed with you, Open for B2B, powered by Watson X and with LinkedIn, is really a solution that we would have taken 3 or 4 years in the making in the past, and we stood it up in several months, right? So I think the more openness, more collaboration, and faster execution is definitely the name of the game going forward.
And maybe getting into that, sort of the partnership that we're working on, it was sort of maybe going back, Jonathan, what was the sort of impetus? What was the data that you saw or the need? What was the problem that you were trying to solve with this notion of thinking about AI, but thinking about maybe the advancement of B2B marketing in the past around buyer groups, which is not a new thing, but maybe there's a new way to actually address or work towards targeting and marketing to buyer groups?
I think a big part of it, and when I went to Stefan and talked to the team at WPP, we said, we're really trying to look at these buyer groups in a different way. So we're trying to look at not just client interest one by one from an organization. We're trying to aggregate those and figure out better patterns that are happening across the organizations. But we're also seeing increased size in the buyer groups. Mm-hmm. So in the average tech buying group today, it's between 17 and 19 people today. And they don't just go straight down the funnel. Now they go up and down. And those 17 to 19 people will insert themselves into the process at various times. And with each buying decision, that group changes. You might have 3 or 4 that are core, but the remaining shift and change with every purchase decision. So when Stefan and I talked, it was, how do we start looking at a way, building on the technology that WPP has and with Watson X, can we put those together? And then we said, let's go to LinkedIn, because there's no better partner to help look at this, to really look at how we can target those buying groups, figure out who they are, so we can give them a more personalized, a more relevant journey along the way.
And do you look at that, because one could just say, oh, that's just targeting. It's just figuring out this group of individuals that sort of connect in some way. But to me, it feels like it could be much broader. It could talk to events, like a whole new approach. So
yes.
Are you looking at it almost as a full sort of stack of looking at this now differently?
It's got to run holistically. With this data, it's got to tie through the entire organization, what we're doing, not just on content, but on events, on digital, wherever we're reaching out, thought leadership, enabling our sales teams in a new way as well to have better conversations with their organizations that they're servicing.
And then maybe, Steph, on your side, this causes a whole new sort of challenge around measurement and attribution, because it's our world of targeted and sort of understanding on an impression basis to a single individual. Now you're saying I'm targeting this group that's a very sort of difficult group to understand, and where they are in the buying cycle and how they're influencing. How have you guys thought about the measurement of that, and then actually attribution to really understand how to optimize and do it again even better?
Look, I think the traditional principles of measurement and performance evaluation remain constant, right? I mean, you things work or they don't work, or they work somewhat well or better. The difference is that the thing that you're addressing and the way that you look at it is far more flexible and morphs over time, right? So a buying group isn't static. It's not a segment that's defined by particular attributes and sort of strict metrics or identifiers. It morphs over time. The composition of the buying group changes. The topics they're interested in change continuously, and the way that you talk to those topics has different influence on the buying group over time. So the sort of application of AI to the buying group concept has allowed us to do is to have an addressable unit that is far more flexible and far more morphing over time and far more real-time relevant than ever before. And I think the other key difference in what we're building together now is that we've not only changed the underlying frameworks of marketing addressability, we've also changed the way that end users interact with the system and with the data. And so this idea of conversational interfaces to be able to pull on a thread, ask questions, refine further, is an entirely new way of building software. Now, you have to do it, and this is why we partnered with Watson X on this, on ground truth data with strict guardrails, incredible amounts of security. But this idea of a CMO being able to speak to their data, inquire, address a buying group, effectively test propositions against the buying group, through the conversational AI is completely revolutionary. And so I think, as much as the underlying sort of scaffolding of the marketing process has been improved, it's also the process of marketing, right? The marketing operational process and the way that people think through that process that is being changed. And that's a really fundamental point in the impact AI is making on the way we work, not just the outputs.
I think that's key. It's how we work. One of the best conversations I had while I was here was around something very simple that we all take for granted. How do we ask the right questions? Because we are going to be able to get so much more insight if we ask the right questions. And I think as we think about skills for our teams, it's about how do we also teach our teams to ask the right questions. Start from scratch, because if you don't ask the right questions, you got a lot of data, it's going to be worthless. So it's really there's a real fundamental shift that we've got to make in skills to make this happen. The tool is amazing, and there's so much change that can happen. We just got to make sure we bring everybody along.
So I know we've talked about some of the performance you've seen in this. Actually, the fact if you can reach, I think it was 4 out of the buyer group, you see an acceleration through the funnel from the sales perspective. Sort of expectations, is it get greater if you hit 6 or 8? How do you think about the number of buyer group, the actual reach frequency, sort of classic way of looking at influence to this larger buyer group? But you've seen some success already. It seems like you're on a path that says this is the right kind of approach.
If we've got some data that we've tested, and we've found that if we touch 4 people in an organization within 60 days, the conversion on that increases 4x. If we add an officer or a C-level, it goes up above 5x on the conversion. So it's a massive shift. And what we can do there as we get even more customized, more relevant, more personalized for people on the journeys, I'm hopeful and expect that we'll see even better returns for our organization.
So we're in Cannes, the creative sort of capital of the world for the industry for this for the year. Jonathan, I think you've talked about story showing. If I sort of remember correctly, sort of we talk all storytelling, but story showing is a little bit of a twist to it. So what's the sort of take that you have related to the creative part of this whole aspect that may be changing too?
I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about today can be very abstract. And people are still questioning how they deploy AI in their business. For every conversation I have with somebody who is saying, yes, I want to do this in my marketing organization, or yes, we're doing it in our business, there's still 2 or 3 conversations that are saying, I'm not sure how to do it, or I'm just starting and we're scaling. So for us, we find that story showing, bringing the technology to life and giving people examples. One of the ways we've done that here at Cannes, we took the technology that we use at Wimbledon or the US Open, and we're putting it into ping pong. So there's a ping pong table on the beach downstairs, and it's in the paddles, and it will track the game. And at the end of the game, the AI will actually tell you who played better and how they did. So you look at things like that. You look at the things that we're doing with the Masters golf tournament. It really brings it to life in a different way and gets people to think about this and go, okay, now I have a new idea. I might not be in sports, but I have a new idea of how this could work in my organization.
Great. I love the ping pong example.
Come on down and play.
Come down and play. So Steph, from your side, again, we talked about it from maybe the technical side and the way you're thinking about it analytically, but certainly the creative plays a big part in this. Yeah. So how are you working with the WPP creative agencies to sort of empower them to understand what you're learning and understanding about the data to help them with their creative process?
Yeah, I mean, it's fundamental to the creative process, not only the making of content, creating images and videos and, voices, etc., but also obviously the ideation process. And so we built and deployed WPP Open, our AI-powered marketing operating system, across the business more than a year ago. And people are using it every day. People are using it to come up with better ideas, to test concepts, to go from imagination to representation much faster, so that you can instead of describing something, show someone what they're going to get. So it's really been adopted enormously quickly in our organization. But the philosophy that we've taken is that it's about augmented creativity. It's about augmenting human creativity, not about replacing it. And I think this is crucial, right? So you can have AI give you recommendations and say to you, if you change that design element, the ad will perform better. Or if you're addressing this buying group, you need to focus on this content. Or you can even get AI to write some of the content that addresses certain buying group concerns. But it has to be reviewed, it has to be moderated by people. And so I think the entire exercise for me is about getting people to spend more time on high-level creativity and sort of high-value tasks, and less time on effectively things that people aren't very good at, to be honest.
And I think the thing we're also seeing is our in-house creative team uses AI as well. 80% of the average creative time in IBM in our studio is spent on the derivative of the original asset. So as we apply AI to that, we can bring that time down. Going back to what Stefan was saying about the bigger idea, being more creative, more value add, the potential there is amazing.
All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you to Stefan and Jonathan for being with us and sharing your knowledge. For more B2B insights, including the latest trends and themes that are defining our industry, please check out the B2B Marketing Benchmark Report. Thanks so much.